I'm good. Evening, sun is setting, but the show is only beginning, right?
Yes, exactly. So I'm happy to have our audience to the really great topic with a really great expert today, and we have really terrific content. And thank you for contributing it. Thank you for collecting it. Our session today will have two major parts: what's going on the AI, in the AI domain, and how it impacts cybersecurity, how it impacts our lives, and what can we as IT people, as a regular people, as a security people, do with it to make sure that it will go smooth further on. As all major leaders across the world are scared of AI and trying to regulate it as much as possible.
Your hair hasn't changed at all.
Thanks. Good. I guess you can see my slides. Yep, terrific. So let's start from the introduction. Marijn, could you please introduce yourself to the...
Hi, everyone. I'm Marijn Markus, data scientist, managing AI person at Capgemini, and I'm from the Netherlands. And my dad always wondered, Marijn, stop sitting behind your computer and go learn a real trade. But as it turns out, Dad, sitting behind your computer is a real trade.
Cool. My name is Nazar, and I'm cybersecurity veteran, specializing in offensive and defensive cybersecurity, governance, compliance, and incident response. This is my specialty, hunting for the threats. And Marijn, you have the floor.
So there's a lot of buzz about AI nowadays. Back in my day, we called it nerd stuff and statistics. I remember I do a lot of social research, crime fighting research, human rights research. I graduated on crime forecasting in my hometown of Rotterdam. We called it statistics, and I had my intake at Capgemini, and they said, wow, that's data science. And I said, yes, because I needed a damn job. This is how I became a data scientist. A few years later, we stopped calling it data science. It became algorithms. Now it's all AI. But the big challenge here, because nowadays we have generative AI and ChatGPT everywhere, the challenge is that it's not about the new stuff or the new technology. It's about the old piece of technology that's holding the new stuff back. Here, in this slide, we see an example of how speech processing and handwriting reading and different language understanding types of AI all progressed at different speeds, some faster, some slower over the last few decades. Now, the main challenge, as I just said, is not the new stuff like large language models. Those are not new. Or search engines. Those are also not new. Or the fact that you can access any of that through internet on your phone. That's also not new. Technological progress is never about the new thing, but about the old thing that's holding the rest back. And nowadays we have teenagers left and right already using ChatGPT, even though they should be talking again about generative AI, but they don't. It's like if you only say ChatGPT, it's like you're talking about iPhones where you should be talking about smartphones in general. But it most certainly is the most popular one right now. To quote a professor friend of mine, the problem isn't that GPT writes papers as good as my students. The problem is that some of my students write papers as badly as GPT, but I still have to give them a passing grade for it, because we give them a passing grade if they write 5,000 words. But writing has become cheap. Rewriting has not. And anyone who ever wrote a thesis knows that. And thus, education will start focusing more and more on proper writing, quality writing, rather than the quantity of writing, because for now we're automating that.
And I guess many of us also like the slides really remind me the thing from I guess it was a season 2 of Black Mirror with a mom and who tried to protect her kids from unwanted content. But at the end of the day, she really failed, and it was huge disaster for the psychology of that kid. And I guess this is why it's really
Well, this is a Dutch example. Anyone in the audience use a dating app? I know you're not going to answer, but anyway, we have this Dutch dating app in the Netherlands called Breeze. It's like Tinder or Hinge or whatever. But the creators of Breeze found Breeze is actually very handy because it's if you match with a person, they sort of schedule the first date for you, so you don't have to do awkward conversations. But the interesting thing here is that they found out that their algorithm was racist, heavily biased. Like white users would only swipe yes to other white users, even if they live in a non-white majority neighborhood. Okay, this is a bit of an issue, our algorithm is racist, but it's self-reinforcing, right? Because new users will be given, try to match with this person based on the preferences of old users. So it's self-reinforcing racism. This is bad. So they went to the Dutch courts, and this is now in progress. We don't have the output. This happened all earlier this year. We don't have the output yet. Saying, if we let this self-reinforcing racist algorithm continue, it will only teach whites to match to white. It will learn to match whites with only other whites. Yada yada. But if we adjust it, and I don't know, start having this, start matching Asians with I don't know, Asians with Arabs or whatever, more often than the normal distribution creates, then we are also being racist. And the law, GDPR, only says you can't have biased and racist algorithms, but it doesn't specify how. Quite often, when it comes to AI or cybersecurity, the law only says you may not. It does not say how. Because whether or not they try to fix this, try to change the algorithm, they're biasing the algorithm. If they let it be as is, there's also a biased algorithm. They are damned if they do and damned if they don't. And we're still waiting on the legislation explaining how to do it. Meanwhile, they've taken this to court, and the user data of users of the app has also gone to court. So that's the data leak.
And it also reminds me about AI and cybersecurity are also somehow similar here, because it is about ethics. Like you can treat hacker
always. There's a huge overlap. The generative AI we use nowadays in deep learning needs so much. It needs such vast quantities of data that, as one guy described it, the whole generative AI trend can be described as one big data leak, because you have a ton of data leaks anytime you even grab or gain enough data to train a model. Which brings me to the next point, and I use Breeze as an example of this. There are no unbiased algorithms, but there are no unbiased humans either. If I researched gender pay gaps, forecast burnouts, I ran models on refugees and how much tomatoes a farmer is going to have end of season. All of these models are simplifications of reality. Any model is a simplification of reality. There's assumptions and generalizations in there. Every model is biased by definition because it's just a model. You cannot have unbiased models unless you just throw the model out the window and go look at reality. Every model is biased, and I am happy if my model is racist and sexist as fuck, pardon my French, because then I am measuring what it's doing wrong, and I can adjust it and do something about it. The true danger is an unbiased model, an unbiased algorithm, because I don't believe they exist, and if they tell you that it exists, they're wrong and they're hiding something, and you should fear. Be afraid. There are no unbiased algorithms, but there are no unbiased humans either, and we need one to keep tabs on another. In the ethics issues I faced before, for example, working in doing research for Dutch government, if there is a form of discrimination on any ethnic minority or LGBT status, I better bring data. I need data and algorithms to prove the discrimination is happening. That's how it usually works. But end of day, in most organizations, all decisions are made by humans, and they only use the data if the data supports the decision they were going to make anyway. Thus, we need more data and algorithms, not less. Drop mic. Oh, and this brings us to the whole ChatGPT craze happening right now, that governments and schools left and right are banning ChatGPT access. Did you know they tried to ban calculators in the 90s and in the 80s?
Yeah,
Teachers were protesting.
I remember that. Like we were like, it was a good intention to make us think, to make us not simplify our life. But at the end of the day, like we are humans. We wanted to, like simplify life and accelerate our progress. I'm sure that calculators are not, like really killing our creativity, but this like there is a need in knowing the basics, but there is like things that really makes complicated things easier.
Agreed. It's a trade-off. There's only so much stuff we can stuff in the heads of kids during an education. Back in the day, education focused heavily on calculating stuff in your head, handwriting, proper spelling. All those three have been automated by typewriters, by spelling checkers, and by graphical calculators. I am terrible at handwriting. You don't want to see my spelling. But because I don't need to focus as much, because I can outsource that to a machine, I can focus a whole lot more on other productive stuff, like, I don't know, making memes or something. Because one comes at the cost of another. And current education needs to shift away from just teaching only basic skills. Because there are some papers by now that show that kids who grew up in schools without computers, because that's the style of education nowadays, where they just refuse to use computers at all, they actually have an issue later in life in the labor market, because they are running behind their peers who do know how to use Google and Word and Excel.
Interesting. I didn't know about this study. What about the job safety, like labor market? You mentioned, like like the speed of adoption and utilization of AI by like regular people, and ChatGPT, OpenAI was like actually really the regulations that make a huge breakthrough, making it available, and demonstrating the highest adoption rate for the application, breaking all the previous like records.
So as a social scientist, I want to look at this from the micro and the macro level perspective. At the macro level perspective, we've had this discussion since the Industrial Revolution, when we should ban steam engines because they're too dangerous and they take work away from people who work with their hands. We should ban cars because they're so unsafe and they explode. So we should all continue to, I don't know, ride horses. You see the same discussion nowadays with electric cars, where people keep writing propaganda about them all catching on fire because they don't want to switch away from cars that run on exploding dinosaurs. So, of course, the issue is more nuanced. But the point here is we've had the discussion about old stuff going away, conservatism, every time something new occurs. You won't be automated by an AI. You won't lose your job to an AI, but you will lose your job to a competitor using AI. Because just like working in factories with your hands was automated, the postal offices were mainly automated because we suddenly had electricity and the internet and phones and radio. In the same way, the internet automated so much data transfers that before that time was done by hand and people running around with giant IBM machines from one government office to the other. In the same way, we are now automating a whole lot of boring writing and accounting tasks. And I remember as a young intern 10 years ago, a legal person was telling me, I don't need to learn how to use a computer. My work adds too much value. Bet by now he's learning how to use a computer, or he's no longer a value. But that is at the macro level. That's the trend. At the micro level, the issue for individual workers is to educate themselves and to continue to be able to train and learn these new skills to apply in their jobs. Because the first industrial revolution was how many dozens years ago, but the second and the third and the fourth, it's all going faster. New technology is introducing faster, and it's not just about if society adopts, but will your competitors adopt before you?
And it's also remind me a great movie about the Iron Man. I remember the first moment when I saw it. It's really impressed me. It's embarrassed my brain to imagine myself in that kind of suit. And like, to be honest, just like a few days after I tried first time, I guess all of us will remember the moment when we have tried something for the first time. The first time I tried ChatGPT, and it's really come up. Well, this is a big thing. It's bold.
I
The
haven't
thing is,
felt like that since I saw my first code run without errors, or even with errors, but it still ran. That's a good feeling.
And I realize that ChatGPT is more like Jarvis in Iron Man, who is your assistant and who do a lot of things like calculation, projection, getting you data quickly, like doing like offloading the boring stuff and leaving you on the only that creative things that boost society.
Yes and no, because this Jarvis is still gambling what answers you want to hear. It does not actually know anything. More on that later. But the major breakthrough here is speech. Large language models like ChatGPT allow us to interface with a computer using speech and natural language rather than learning a tool, learning a coding language, or learning some scripting, which the average human, the average user does not want to. Which leads us to this point of everyone creating their own Google. Okay, for anyone listening here, I hope people are listening, tell us in the comments, how often a day do you use Google? I know this might be the hardest calculation you have to do every day today. How often do you use Google a day?
And interesting thing is that it's a very good question that every like during the discussion, every CISO, every IT director should be asked to, because this is a thing that they, I believe, not realize. Yeah, great Cap.
20, and we're getting responses over here, 20 times a day. Okay, here's the thing. Before we had Google often, that is a very honest answer, Eileen, thank you. Tony, 30 times. Anyone want to go higher? Andrew is going 30 plus times, I see. Whoa. DuckDuckGo. Okay, Elijah wins. The major point here, fellas, is that before we had Google, we had to go to a library. And we had to know which book on which store, in which sector we could find knowledge. We had explicit knowledge retention. We had to memorize that stuff. Nowadays, we no longer need that. We have implicit knowledge retention. We no longer need to know information. We merely need to have the skill to know where to find it. And usually, we use Google. But why do we use Google? When we work for large multinationals, organizations, banks, governments, blah, blah, because our own search engine of our own company is usually shit. Pardon my French. We still use Google so much because we have no alternatives, which in turn is also a massive data breach and cybersecurity risk every time. Because if they can't find it internally, they start Googling it externally, then Google knows what you're interested in. I remember doing a research paper on dating apps, Tinder and Grindr specifically, for the Sochi Winter Olympics, I believe. So I had to Google a whole lot about how Grindr works. And for 2 years straight, Google was offering me gay-friendly holidays because Google was like, this motherfluffer's been Googling this stuff. He's into it. No, Google, I'm not. But Google suddenly knew a whole lot about my interests. And Google knows a whole lot about the interests of all your companies because your employees are Googling everything. Why are they Googling everything on your computers? Because they can't find it on your SharePoint, internet, whatever, because you have a very bad search engine there. Now, search engines are nothing new. this is important. Google is a search engine, the most popular and most successful one worldwide, maybe. But in the 90s, artificial intelligence was heavily focused on search engines. Anyone in the field back then knew search engines, a proper search engine, that was AI. Nowadays, we don't call it AI anymore. We think it's normal. We don't even call it a search engine anymore. We call it Googling. The stuff you use 30 times a day, that was cutting edge AI 30 years ago. But like Larry Tesler once said, AI is whatever machines haven't done yet. Because the moment we fix it and we make the machine do something that was truly human, a few years later, we don't think it's cool anymore. This is why Google is the most successful piece of AI technology in human history up till this point. And maybe Netflix is a far distant second, because Netflix also got its own verb, Netflixing. Now, having said that, search engines are not new. Everyone's using Google. But what's new is the way we interface with large language models, with GPT models. And what a lot of companies are doing now, what I'm in my work building nowadays for names I cannot mention, is hooking up a GPT model to an internal search engine of a company, so you can search all your subsidy requests, all your writing, all your private literature, all your previous legal cases, and all your PowerPoints.
And this really reminds me, like when you were speaking about the, like what Google knows about us. Do you remember the movie Ex Machina?
Ex Machina, yeah.
Ex Machina, yeah. No, it was a really great example of why privacy matters, and data we give up to the to the web helps the algorithms to know us better. And it's very cool that on the recent OpenAI Developers Day, I guess you have seen when Sam Altman makes this presentation of new custom GPTs, where organizations can let their own employees to create their own knowledge models, to let the top experts in the rocket science, experts in a chemistry or bio or in a like pharma, to create their own special knowledge graphs and keep that knowledge inside the organization.
And that's the word, knowledge graph, because a simple SQL database search engine won't get you there. Knowledge graphs have also been here for 5 now more years, for decades. Neo4j is nothing new. But knowledge graphs allow you to sequester and compartmentalize different parts of your own knowledge base in your company, for example, so you can be privacy compliant from a cybersecurity point of view by saying only this division can access this part of the data, this division can access this part of the data, and you only access this level of the data to run queries on and to generate text with. Like if you don't, I'm working on a demo right now using open government documents, and then I can query those documents to say, okay, write me a case in Dutch, like I'm a 5-year-old, with bullet points, with smileys at the start. Because the data retrieval is only one part of the show here. The other part is data transformation, information transformation. And that's the cool stuff, because I get a neat write out about this question, like I'm a 5-year-old, with smileys and bullet points, so I can post that stuff on LinkedIn. But I also get sourcing, but it's not in those exact words, because I can automate a part of the rewriting part.
And the interesting part is that not everyone are good in Googling, not everyone. And it's similar to driving. Like if you ask an average person, are you a good driver? Like I believe more like around 100% will say yes. I'm an average. I'm a good driver. I feel confident on the road.
What was it? 85% of humans think they're smarter than the average person.
Exactly.
But the big thing here is that you don't have to be the best driver. You don't have to be the best Googler, though it really helps. And you don't have to be the best GPT expert. I am a social scientist, sociology, criminology, a lot of statistics. I work with econometricians, psychologists, computer scientists. This guy who did something with astrology or astronomy, he gets angry when I confuse the two. But the point is, we all have different backgrounds. We see different problems. We have different solutions. But together, by combining all these different fields, that none of us are experts on everything, but we can all contribute something. Together, we can achieve better solutions. And that is why I love the field of data.
Thanks.
Recruiters, you can quote me on that.
Idea of utilizing the chatbots and for dating and for recruiting, like the idea was there for a while, but yeah, GPT will transform these industries a lot. I remember you wanted to mention about the case of Uber.
Yeah. This is an old example. People in the audience, how often do you use Uber? And how often do you use a traditional taxi?
Two, 3 times a day.
A day? Damn.
A day.
Lviv, right?
No, like when I travel, okay. It's
okay.
When I travel.
So we have to rewind a decade, because 10 years ago, Uber was competing with traditional taxis. How did they do that? By saying they're all legal and compliant, and they will respect all the employment issues, blah blah, and they have a security officer and a privacy officer and an ethics officer. No, they said, screw the rules, I want money. They, at least in my country, they dodged most of the employment rules that say you have to pay your employees, blah blah, and give them a retirement fund, by saying no, they're just purchasing a service. So they could keep the rates down, and they could outcompete traditional taxis to a ridiculous extent, to the extent that nowadays traditional taxis are mostly gone. And the main competitor of Uber is a copy of Uber called Bolt. So they didn't just say ethics don't matter. That's also not what I'm saying, by the way. I talk about ethics most of all. But they had a trade-off, a perverse incentive to say, if we just care about ethics later, after we outcompete everyone and annihilate the competition, then we'll be ruling the market, and then we'll pay those fines. This is the Uber issue. The risk of adopting new systems and new technology when your competitors won't. Or to turn it around, the Uber issue is that your company, can say, screw the rules, I grab this new technology and I will leave everyone else behind me and I will take over the market. Meanwhile, when we talk AI nowadays, we see all the companies publish endless poetry and documents about how they think ethical AI is important, how they think privacy is important, how they think security is all important. Meaning they haven't achieved the Uber issue yet. They're nowhere near that, because half the companies would be doing that instead if they could, but they can't. And every time I hear a beautiful podcast about how important this stuff is to the company, I'm happy, because it should be important. But I'm also like, what are you not telling me?
And that's a great topic, you raised. So from your perspective, why businesses, why enterprises failing in adopting AI?
It's usually because they haven't done their homework. To reply to a question from the audience, we'll be taking questions at the end. But to give you an example with the search engines and now querying that, now most companies encounter the problem that they haven't done their homework for like a decade. They haven't kept their internet up to date. They don't have proper internal search engines. Their SharePoint is a mess and you can't find anything. So they can't hook it up to an AI and accelerate and do the Uber thing and outcompete the competitors because their IT is stuck. And this is the real risk for many companies, in that they're just not ready for it. Not because the new technology, new AI isn't there yet, because it is. But it's never about the new piece of technology. It's about the legacy in the old technology that's holding you back from implementing the new thing. terrible data quality, a lack of access, lack of maneuverability or agility are just some other examples there, and I think those are mentioned in the slide as well.
Good. Do you want to cover anything from this slide?
No, I think we mentioned most of this already. Well, all of ChatGPT is basically one big data leak, and I so love that you made the words "educate employees" extra big over here, because we had this beautiful incident at a Dutch government whose name I shall not mention that just said we ban GPT. ChatGPT, the IP is no longer accessible on any of our devices because it's dangerous. What do you think happened? Were they safe from that point on, from a cybersecurity perspective?
Obviously,
Nobody stopped
no.
using it. They all started using their damn phones to access GPT, meaning they were no longer writing that directly into the company compliant laptop. They were taking pictures of the screen and they were uploading their "hey, how does Grindr work" questions through third-party devices. So suddenly Google has access as well. Just banning stuff never works. It's like telling teenagers not to drink, not to do drugs, and I don't know, not to get frisky with each other. Banning that stuff will only make them want to do it all the more, or they'll do it in another way. I don't know, in your dad's car or something, where people won't find out. And it's the exact same stupid thing with ChatGPT. Banning it won't mean people will stop using it. It just means they will use it outside of the limitations you set and outside of your influence. And this is suddenly not about ChatGPT, but about restrictions in general from cybersecurity point of view. Because if you apply a restriction for something they need, then you just abandoned control over it entirely. I worked for a client that started banning forums you can't access forums anymore through their Wi-Fi because they don't want people to browse forums during work. They blocked Stack Overflow. I could no longer access Stack Overflow. For those in the audience, Stack Overflow is basically the Bible for developers. I could, back in before GPT, I could no longer access the biggest forum on code because they thought I was browsing a forum. There is always a huge risk involved with banning stuff.
Absolutely agree with you. And like in cybersecurity, and this, like very often cybersecurity is used to like limit access to this kind of resources. On the other hand, like if you are scared of something, and if you are as a CIO, you have to be leader and educate. Like you have to lead people to and business, because you have if you have a CIO or CISO role, it means that you are C-level executive. It means that it is expected that you will make a transformational impact on the business. And if you want to make sure that your employees are not your weakest link, lead them to the right direction and lead them through the education, awareness, and show them how to use these things safely. That's why we have.
That is the basic of leadership, setting the right example. Leadership is not telling what people should do. Leadership is doing a thing and hoping others will follow.
Exactly. Great. I remember I had a discussion with senior Gartner expert, and she told me that most of CISOs were scared to use ChatGPT, and were trying also to ban it in their organizations. And we have here a really good list of things that like steps that every CISO or CIO or IT director, anyone who is actually not just manager, but real leader in the community, who can just take these things and implement in their environment. Because very often when we are helping companies with incident response, companies who have been a victim of ransomware, when you ask them, hey guys, what was the most sensitive data you were storing in your mailboxes or in your Exchange or like on your SharePoint, most of businesses do not know what they have what they store. They do not have the data knowledge, data classification, data discovery. So it's
No,
absolutely
they only have cost estimates of the risk and how much bucks it's going to cost them when it leaks. I'm
exactly.
gonna way back in the day, so like, oh god, that's 15 years ago, when I was a little nerd frothing around with WikiLeaks. I remember somebody said the best thing to ever happen to hackers is industry's obsession with cybersecurity. Because they obsess over cybersecurity, hire very expensive consultants like me, and spend so much time on writing and bookkeeping and prevention and risk assessment, they are not actively trying to stop the hackers.
And by the way, you mentioned about consultants. It's interesting because this was the first things I it come up on top of my mind that like with ChatGPT, with Bard, with all other AI texts that will come later on, we have like this privileged access to knowledge of consultants, like to being able to ask privately, anyone about like a GPT about the things that will give us like more competent, precise answer.
Yeah, that's a great example of what we just discussed, leveraging your own internal data, information, knowledge bank, whatever you have in your company, and putting a GPT model on top to talk about it. So your employees can use that knowledge to their advantage, because right now they're using OpenAI and Google.
Exactly.
And they're not leveraging the stuff you have because you don't give them access to it.
And I remember that interesting case with Microsoft when like 38 terabytes of internal Teams chats leaked to like it was not a breach of any AI system. It was not breach of anything like ML, sophisticated Stuxnet or things like that. It was just as like human mistake of a DevOps guy who like exposed or like contractor. I don't remember the detail of that specific case, but it's come up that 38 terabytes of private chats of Microsoft employees were exposed. So it was not about the limitation access to ChatGPT or other tech. It was about the data governance and knowing yourself, knowing your assets, knowing your employees, knowing customers, KYC, KY, now becoming another big things. And it was really easily preventable. These things like external text interface analysis and controlling your suppliers.
There's no accounting for human stupidity to some extent.
Yep.
From one hand, but on the other hand, it's also things will go wrong. Shit will hit the fan at some point, and you just don't know it. Remember, the phrase "shit hits the fan" means it goes up and it hits a fan that's spinning. You don't know which way it's gonna fling. Is it you or is it your partner? Is it your cat? But shit's gonna fling. And the real question is how you deal with it. I had a live demo last week. And as you know, live demos always fail.
Always.
But there's only one thing better than a successful live demo. That's a live demo that fails, and then you fix it on the spot, pressing F5 a whole lot and rebooting some stuff. And then it worked. And the real achievement wasn't the fact that we had a live demo, but that shit hit the fan and we managed to deal with it. Speaking of shit hitting the fan, this is another example. This is this week. I'll post the link in the chat. This is a generative AI image generation example where researchers have been able to reproduce images from the training set using specific prompts. Now, you all use Google Photos or whatever, and Google or Facebook or Instagram, I hope not TikTok, they all have access to the photos you uploaded over there. And they're all using that stuff to train AIs to generate new images. And you think that's cool because it's just using for training, right? Just to produce weights. They wouldn't actually be able to reproduce the photos entirely, right? Well, that's where you're wrong. Scientists are now showing that you can, in fact, reproduce those images if you know what you're doing, which is really interesting from one point of view, and also really scary from another point of view, because you know what 18-year-olds are going to do with this. End of day, and that's my main point here. AI, generative AI, is a dice roll. It's, the model does not actually know what answer it's giving you about President Washington or whatever. It is guessing what words you want to hear. It is gambling what images you want to see. That you want to see Winnie the Pooh, I don't know, riding a roller coaster or something. It's guessing that you want to hear this song of Freddie Mercury or Prince. But it's way better at guessing answers than humans are. But it has no way of proving those answers, because your Jarvis does not actually know what it's saying. It's just guessing, you want to hear a response like this. You want to hear an answer like this. The real reason ChatGPT is a Google killer is not because the quality of its answers are better. The quality of its answers are worse. But if you use Google for something, you have to click 2-3 links. You have to read shit before you get an answer. If you use GPT, you'll get an answer straight away. The quality might be less, might be wrong, might be hallucinating, but it's easier. The real reason GPT is a Google killer is because it's easier to use. But it's an incredibly powerful tool, and God help me, I'm happy that we have it, because there's a lot of memes we couldn't produce if we didn't have it. But it is, like any other AI, a tool with pros and cons and trade-offs. And we have to keep this in mind. Generative AI is a dice roll, but we roll dice every day. Every day we go into traffic. Every day we buy a lottery ticket. Every day we open our social media and expect the algorithm to show us stuff that's cool. We are gambling. Every time you buy flowers for your wife because you're going to be home late, you're making a dice roll. Our lives are full of it, and our machines are full of it as well. But for some reason, we are fine with taking all those risks as humans. But the moment a machine takes a risk, rolls a dice, and gets it wrong, the machine is evil and bad. And that doesn't make sense to me. That's a double standard.
Fair enough. From your perspective, what CIOs, CISOs, just regular IT admins can do in organizations to make sure that, you mentioned about the important fact, to be ready. From like what we do at UnderDefense, we specialize in the incident response, and from things you just shared with us, it's obviously come out that if you are not ready, you will fail. If you are going on the date and you are not preparing, not thinking what it can be, it can go easily and naturally, but it's always better to have some topics to discuss.
The greatest risk is that both the greatest threats and opportunities lie outside the CIO's direct jurisdiction. The greatest threats, human error, mistakes being made during day-to-day business, during HR sending a wrong email with all internal data, God knows what. The greatest business opportunities also lie outside the direct jurisdiction. So it's actually the challenge to collaborate with every other part of your business and your organization. In the same way that if you have an innovation department, oh gosh, I work in an innovation department, that doesn't mean the rest of the organization doesn't have to do innovation anymore. If you have an ethics department, committee, whatever, club, that doesn't mean the rest of your company doesn't have to be ethical anymore. And in the same way, the cybersecurity and the CIO parts of your company aren't just there to point fingers at when Jimmy accidentally leaks something again. They're there to collaborate with the rest of the organization to help educate and innovate and enhance and prevent that stuff in the first place.
From my experience, very often CIOs don't have a control and visibility. And like all this AI movement, if CIO or CISO properly sell it to the business, can actually gain finally control over the data, over the, like perimeter over the data, like the people exposed, and how their employees in like IT systems users are living, what they are doing, where they're storing, and he can influence their like behavior through learning how they operate. And that's why like CISOs can lead this initiative through first learning about what they are storing where, about their like not building their policies, because policies doesn't help. Policies is just a formal document, but actually utilizing the tool sets that can help them discover what's important data they can use to influence their behavior. And
there you have it. The CIO can only do their job best if they have mandate and power to change the rest of the organization.
yeah, but again, why do we have a CIO if they don't have power to change the organization?
Well, many organizations just want somebody to blame. Many organizations addressed and created data privacy officers when GDPR was introduced, just so they can have somebody to point at when there's a data leak and privacy is involved, without any power to educate or change the way the company is run. But at that point, it's just a scapegoat. And unfortunately, in my data profession, I see a lot of scapegoats. And they all get angry at me because I ask for the gender and ethnicity and sexual orientation of everyone in my data set. And that's privacy, and you can't have that. But then I go like, if you don't give me that, then I can't check if my algorithm discriminates any of those.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the moment they usually go quiet. And that's why I love my job.
Cool. So what I learned from also advising CISOs, to assure that they are not facing additional risks, to do two things: to develop and validate and assume that the data is already exposed to the ChatGPT or BART or something else, and be ready to respond, to build a model, to build a threat model, to have a security operation maintenance, because like this is a case of Microsoft, who is really great in AI race, but they making this operational and data handling mistakes. And we saw 24/7 Uber was hacked, Microsoft leaked, and other guys faced huge problems. And when you joining this huge AI movement, and you building a products like chatbots, security really matters in this kind of products. And secure design, there's usually design and development or R&D, and security is becoming really a big part and element of every software development project. So it should be there. Otherwise, you will become famous like these guys here. Where do you have this slide? With here with dilemma and another sensitive thing that were exposed through some improper design and improper implementation. Also, very often
I fully agree. Security, like ethics, should not just be a checkbox.
It's great. Let's I really want to make a citation of this for you. It's really matter. And I often ask, people ask me what practical tools you can recommend to give us back control over our environment, where our people are going, how often they are going. To have this answer, how often you use Google, to have the answer, how often people like use other resources that may be AI affiliated or maybe malicious. So I personally love a lot things like Zscaler, but there is plenty of other security edge, security cloud access tool sets for Mac and Windows that allow to control how, not just to control, I don't like the word control, to learn more about your employees and help them to do the things they will do in any way better and securely.
They're really just like a parent, and these are the tools to help the parent, educate the kids better, because the kids are going to get it on anyway.
Absolutely agree with you. One of the things that we at UnderDefense, as example, utilize, because for us it's critical to also make sure that we are safe. We managed to build a platform that automates and orchestrates security and also collect all that telemetry and signals about the threats. So if there is a data leak or dark web mentioned about us or our customers, or things appear on our perimeter or perimeter of our customers, we notifying them about that incident and helping them to minimize this exposure and leakage as quick as possible. Because in the modern world, it's a race of, if there is something leaked, some data set, some training data set leaked on a S3 bucket, if you spotted it and quickly remediated, it give you a high chances that nobody will mention it and dump the data, corporate secrets. But if you don't have this 24/7 monitoring, if you don't care about security, man, you will be facing GDPR and other regulations.
Oh, we're only going to see more of that, because as the Breeze dating app issue showcased, we don't even know the full meaning of GDPR. There's too little legislation on where the limit of privacy and where the limit of what is legally allowed is. And we're going to find that out over the next 2 years. It's going to be fun. But in the meantime, people, please do start asking questions in the chat.
Well, while people are asking, they have questions. Okay.
Okay, how can companies best assess the risk of simple AI tools? We could answer that question. Would take us roughly an hour. The simplest question is going to be: does it use cloud? Because if it uses cloud, then there's cybersecurity at risk, yada yada. If it runs locally, so on your local machine or on a server accessible only within your environment, then there's much less risk. So cloud discussions are usually the first the first thing. What do you think?
I absolutely agree with you. I'm thinking about if we speak about assessing the risk again, it's knowing yourself. It's like the art of the war. Like first you need to know yourself and to understand where your data is stored and handled. What kind of data it is.
What is used for? Who is using it for what? How are they combining it? Because sure, if I only know your age, I can't pinpoint you. If I know your age and your gender, maybe not. But if I also know what fields you work in and your living location, then I can sure as heck point you out in a data set. So privacy is not a yes/no issue, in the same way that compliance or good bad is not a yes, no, black, white, 0, 1 issue. It is a scale.
Hope we answered your question.
We'll just have to join a next podcast or something, because you can talk about this for hours. How can a training and development function embrace AI? I'm so happy you asked, Bonolo. We are developing a training for cybersecurity. You might have heard of AI Dungeon back in the day. No, AI Dungeon is not a kinky, something kinky. You can Google it. It is a game. It was one of the earliest iterations of OpenAI's large language models, but it was used to write stories, Dungeons and Dragons, Lord of the Rings style fantasy stories. And you could write what your character is doing and basically have your own version of Twilight fan fiction. But it was really cool. And what we're now using is using giant prompts to create trainings for people. So if you've ever done a cybersecurity training where you have to click 3 buttons, ABC, on what would you do if a file leaks, contact the manager. What if blah, blah happens? Contact the manager. That's usually the right answer. But that's just ABC clicking. People don't learn from that. What we're doing now is generating creating huge prompts so people can play a game in the same way they played fantasy stuff, where you are an employee and the servers went down and there's a data leak. What do? I contact the service center. The service center is down because they're in India and it's at night over there. What do? I escalate to the manager. So you can actually talk and write a story. And that's a completely different way of training. And that's rather a technically advanced function, but I'm very much looking forward to creating AI role-playing games in the future to train people. The very simplest version here is to just give your people ChatGPT access, organize a class, and have them answer questions. Okay, who was the blah blah president of the US? Okay, now give it to me in bullet points. Now in French. Now use smileys. Now explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old. I love explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old, because then the answer completely changes, but it is still technically correct. And just by giving some examples and forcing everyone to try it out, you can often teach them a whole lot about how ChatGPT works. Even though beforehand they'll say, oh, we don't need it. Nazar, you want to go?
Yeah, again, first of all, it's a tricky question because, like, it's like, how you can recommend to use AI, OpenAI in this case, to help prevent cyber security crime. Like there is a known, controls that if you on a YouTube googling things about bombs or things like that, this type of content is rising your risk score, and if you reach some risk score, you can be reported to law enforcement. AI can easily do this kind of analysis of behavior and requests and tracking, but to be very honest, I don't want AI to trace me to this kind of extent. Like people wanted to be free. They wanted to have confidence in their privacy. They want to be creative. They don't want it to live in the boundaries. AI can help with that, but AI can help better with the investigation. Like we don't want it to become like from my perspective. So like freedom is not free. You have to fight for freedom. I'm as Ukrainian, I know it very well, and like that's why we have GDPR. It's about the ethic and respect to the human rights. From AI is very helpful because it's help you to learn how to ask the right questions. Especially OpenAI helps with it. That's why we mentioned that not everyone are good in Googling. I guess this is my answer.
It's a good answer. Like, AI is a tool in the end, and we can use it to fight crime in the same way we can use it to fight cybercrime. That's at the micro level, to like do testing. A lot of testing is automated nowadays, and at the macro level, you can use it for all types of analytics.
Like, and as you mentioned, like algorithm makes mistakes, people makes mistakes.
But people who know how math and algorithms work usually make slightly less mistakes than people who don't know how math works. And unfortunately, the people who don't know how math works are still in charge a lot of the time. But I did not say that out loud.
It's the case. I guess we have a great question here in the comment. Can you see it? About social school workers.
Can we bring that question up? I don't think we're seeing the same comments right now.
There is a question about, I'm working as a social school worker on that exact problem. The calculator comparison is on a point, and I've been using it all the time. It is about the responsive use and acceptance compared to dramatic thinking and misuse, which is often leading to long-term disadvantages even for the user.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the question.
Is that the same question as the one on screen right now?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, okay. Yes, I think we are now seeing the biggest thing since Google. And I already explained why Google was such a big thing, because it transformed a human society from an explicit knowledge retention and you need to know this stuff to an implicit knowledge retention. You just need to be able to find it. Society, workflow, whatever. It changed our education systems in the same way. And in the same way, now we no longer need to write everything, because we can just request, give this to me in New York Times style or BBC style, although that will be heavily biased, in French, blah, 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 like a consultant. But being able to generate those that stuff, knowing what prompt creates and triggers what, that will be the new game. And that is like just knowing what to ask. That is basic communication. Communication skills will actually become way more important. Or as developers say, people will only be able to use GPT properly if they know what they want and they know how to articulate their question, so we won't be automated away for 100 years. Or like my exes all used to say, communication is important. I'm still working on that.
Terrific. Yeah, like it is sometimes, people may be scary that their kids will be smarter than them. But again, we are humans. We evolve like not everyone again, but we have also a program inside us, a maturity program, where we get like older, sometimes smarter, where we have different needs on different stages of our life, and experience. That's what really matters at the end of the day.
Let's be honest, we work in IT. Our whole family asks us to come fix the printer because we work with computers, so we can fix everything. The interesting thing right now in education, where it used to be, Marijn does something with computers. That's how my mom describes my job, basically. But now 1 in 3 jobs in the entire Western labor market is in IT. 1 in 3 workers does something with computers. It's the word doesn't cover the load anymore. It's an aggregation. But what we're seeing now with kids who used to all know how modems work and servers because they had to fix the internet every time it went down, kids nowadays have less hardcore computer IT skills than 1 generation ago. They don't know how noises and call-up services, what that is anymore. Because nowadays, they just swipe on their tablet. We didn't even have tablets. And that's it. So I'm becoming an old dinosaur because now I'm complaining about the next generation. But I'm actually very interested to see how this will develop over the next few years. Because the last 10, 20 years, 30 years, and I was part of that generation, was learning more computer hardcore IT skills than the previous generation. But what will the next generation learn aside from being addicted to TikTok? And I'm not saying they won't learn, but they will have different skills. And those, I believe, will focus so much more on communication and being able to tell the model what you want. Because my generation was terrible at communication. We were stuck behind computers all day.
But I wanted to encourage everyone after this discussion to be brave and also convince their CIO, IT director, and all the rest of the folks in the schools to if you wanted to make technology work safely for you, ask an expert to help you to do it right, to do it safely, and it will make a difference. Don't just try to block something that scares you. It wouldn't work with this.
Especially when the competitor might already be doing it. I'm going to quote a Dutch friend of mine who once told me, it's a Dutch saying, Marijn, you already have a no. Because if you don't ask, you already have the answer is already no. But if you ask, if you try, the answer might be yes. So, end of the day, it's better to try and maybe fail than to not have tried at all.
Marijn, thank you so much for this really inspiring and practical conversation. And hope our audience, if you don't have any further question, we'd wrap up.
If you do have questions, just reach out to us, like and subscribe. That's what you say at the end, right?
Yeah, but again, you can always reach out to any of us on the LinkedIn, and we would be more than happy to answer all your questions and try to guide you with this experience we have, because we wanted to pay it forward. This is an approach that both of us, I believe, utilize in our life.
Sharing is caring, people.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. Take care. Have a good day. And Slava Ukraini.
Heroям слава. Thank you. Cheers.